Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Enabling and Customer Services Committee. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our Council's website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you are in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. We have several important reports to consider today, and I anticipate we will deal with the business in our usual efficient and effective manner. Item 1, Sedent apologies and Chair's approval. Mr. Evans, can you provide the Sedent and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. This morning we have 8 members present in the hall, being Councillors Hislop, Marsh, Dashford, Dorwood, Mail, Slater, Stitt and Wilson. We have 11 members present on Microsoft Teams. We have 2 members not present at the start of the meeting, being Councillors Ian Carruthers and Andrew Giusti. No apologies, Chair.
I note that you're in the room, Councillor Scobie.
Apologies, Councillor Scobie.
And we know Councillor Carruthers has joined the meeting as well.
Thank you.
Item 2, do any members have a declaration of interest or a statement of connection they wish to make? Councillor Ingalls.
Sorry, I'm not sure if there was an apology recorded for Councillor Giusti.
Thank you, Councillor Ingalls. We'll record that.
Thank you.
Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Statement of connection, I sit on the board of the IJB.
Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Yep, it's a statement of connection from myself also in relation to item 4 and item 8. And the statement of connection is regarding my role as the national spokesperson for resources at COSLA. Thank you.
Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Similar to Councillor Dorward, I also sit in the IJB, so statement of connection, thanks.
I think that's everyone covered. Move on to item 3. Can we approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of November 2024? Councillor McFarlane.
Sorry, Chair, legacy hand.
I'll take silence as agreement. Now we move on to item 4, Local Government Finance Settlement 25-26 and the impact on the financial strategy. This report provides members with updated information on the Council's overall budget position following the announcement of the Local Government Finance Settlement for 25-26. Gillian Ross is here to assist members if they have any questions, and happy to open up to members. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Draw the committee's attention to 4.6, page 20 of the papers, in terms of non-domestic rates, poundage. And we know that business rates, are set by the government but benefit the council, broadly speaking. Note that UK government has provided a rates relief scheme for retail, hospitality and leisure of over 1.5 billion. The Scottish Government have provided some relief for, I think, hospitality and leisure, but not for retail. So I would suggest that we write to Scottish Government and ask that they consider providing some relief for retail, and the relief that they provide the local authorities with additional monies from the 5.2 billion they've received from the UK Government. Because if you look at our town centres across the region, retail is declining rapidly, and one of the things the Scottish Government could do to help, and the Council can't do this, the Government has to do it, would be to provide some relief on retail rates. Thank you.
Right. Gillian, just to clarify, that is the case, and would that be acceptable for us to write that letter?
Thank you. Within the settlement on page 31, there is a note that the retail, hospitality and leisure relief, which was introduced during COVID, I think it was when that will come to an end on the 31st of March 2025 this year. So you're correct in that that one will come to an end at this point in the year. I'm not sure whether there's an ability to change, what's obviously set at national levels, but that's for members to consider.
I think that if we can send that letter requesting those updates, whether they can do it or not, we'll get a response from the relevant minister at the relevant time. So put that down as an action. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm looking at, it's really just to see if we're any closer to getting detail on the national insurance contribution support, if you like, from the Scottish Government. I think they've indicated some commitment to try and mitigate the effects of the £6 million impact on directly employed staff in Dumfries and Galloway, but I don't know if we've actually got a final confirmed detail on that. So I'm just sort of wondering how much help the Scottish Government can give to address that. And also, I appreciate some of that may be sort of linked to staff employed in adult social care, but I'm just sort of wondering, is there a potential risk that we're aware of across the sector in terms of commission services that might ultimately fall back to the council if smaller third and private sector businesses fail or are unable to cope with that national insurance pressure? Thank you.
Gillian, is there an update on the amount for NIC and anything coming forward with regard to commission services?
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm, I think there was an email that was issued to all members last week by Paul in reflection of the Scottish Budget Stage 1 announcement, where it was confirmed that additional resources of £144 million will be made available to support local authorities in relation to increased costs. The important aspect as part of that is that this funding only equates to approximately 60% of the estimated cost of the charges, and is only in relation to staff directly employed by councils, which does cover the adult social care element in terms of the delegated functions with that. But it makes absolutely no allowance for anything associated with commission services at this point in time. So in terms of our share of that, we haven't yet had any consideration or details in relation to that, and that will go through the normal process in terms of consideration by the Settlement and Distribution Group and through leaders. So in terms of our share of those resources, we haven't yet had those confirmed, so we can't confirm those. But based on the information that we've got at the moment, there is no impact or change in relation to the funding assumptions that we've got in front of you in terms of the funding gap. that the receipt of those resources is in line with what we had anticipated as part of that process. So there's no impact in terms of the funding gap. However, there will continue to be some lobbying between COSLA and the Scottish Government in relation to trying to encourage further receipt of resources to help support that shortfall going forward.
Thank you. And, yeah, sorry, thanks, Chair. Just to come back quickly on the, so is there a potential risk that we're sort of preparing for, or at least you know, devising our matrices for, just to sort of capture that there might be an impact or a likelihood of Commission services not being able to deliver on behalf of the Council, so ultimately the responsibility will fall to us. Do we have any, I suppose, horizon scanning around that? Thank you.
Gillian?
In terms of that issue, obviously it's a national issue and there's no funding being provided to local authorities to help support that. It does present a risk in that other functions may obviously be impacted, you know, by that financial cost, and they may approach the Council, but at this point in time there is no resources being received on a national basis to help Council support that at this point in time. So we recognise the risk, and I think that's highlighted there, but the funding that's reflected within the settlement is in relation to Council's services.
Councillor Dorward?
Thank you, Chair. With reference to Councillor Thompson's concerns on issues about risk to adult social care budgets, I think we should also point out that, this is 4.11, page 21, sorry, in the papers, there's a 357 million funding gap for health and social care partnerships. This was last year, an increase in 187% from the projected funding gap of the year before. So it isn't just about the matter of national insurance, it's a matter of a massive funding gap cumulatively enabled by Scottish Government. So what they've done is they provided us with some funding for, if I can just get my notes sorted here, I'll come back to that one. They have provided us with some funding, but it doesn't actually deal with service provision. So what we're being faced with on the IJB is a significant funding gap, as is in the notes here, and the potential of cutting services. So whilst I appreciate that the SNP may be concerned, or Councillor Thompson may be concerned with national insurance, which is a very small part of that, the big issue is significant underfunding for social care services over the past decade and more. And I think we should be supporting the COSLA position to lobby Scottish Government to get more money even, into health and social care. Thank you.
I'll take that more as a statement than a question to the officer. But, Councillor Ferguson.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm referring to 4.17. And I just wonder if Gillian can explain to us exactly what the level of unachieved savings from the 24-25 budget are likely to be. And then does that then, of course, I'm assuming that then gets added to this coming budget. So if we just get a wee bit of explanation for people there so that we fully understand the level of the unachieved savings and then how we've got to try and achieve them in the future.
Gillian, could you clarify those points, please?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Ferguson. The details in relation to the delivery of agreed savings is covered in the next report on the agenda covering the Council's budget monitoring position, and those are covered within Appendix 2 and 3 of the report. So in terms of service-specific savings, there is an in-year projected shortfall of £436,000, and that's primarily associated with timing and will be delivered in full from 25-26, so there's no impact in terms of the savings gap in relation to those. There is also a reference in relation to the targeted savings, and those again are covered within the Appendix 2 of the report in relation to the funding approach for those as well. So there is no carry forward based on the application that's covered in the next report that would require to be considered as part of changing the funding gap that we have noted within this report. It's all been accounted for in the current financial year.
So if we come back in, so that means we've met the targets then.
As stated, there's an in-year shortfall in relation to the service savings, and those are projected to be achieved in full. So there is a shortfall this year, which will be met in full from next year, and the targeted savings, the approach set out in the report, means that those will be fully addressed through corporate funding this year. So that all savings have been addressed as part of the 24-25 funding mechanisms. So there's nothing to carry forward in relation to any projected shortfall.
Thanks, Gillian.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I'm looking at page 23 to begin with, under 4.16, and while we've received a better Scottish local government settlement, we are still very much under pressure from other services. Then I relate that back to 4.9, where it talks about additional support for learners and national funding of an increase, or what I see is an increase of 28 million, but not yet distributed. I know it's within members' gifts, but can we see, is this being ring-fenced for additional support needs where we are seeing an ever-increasing demand on additional support needs? It's something that I keep coming back to at budget time, but can we be assured that this will be ring-fenced and put to additional support needs for children who do need this additional support?
Gillian.
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Just to confirm that the resources, once they're allocated, will be ring-fenced by the Council, and we will make them available for additional support and learning, and it will be through discussions with the Education Director in terms of what those are used for and can be brought forward in terms of the application of those. You'll also note that there is an ongoing pressure in relation to additional support needs transport, and there will be an element of consideration in relation to that funding helping to support any aspect of that. But the overall position will be discussed and agreed with the Head of Education and Learning.
Follow up, Councillor Scobie.
I take it from that answer that it will be both and not all being distributed to transport, when what we really need is the additional support needs for the children that are requiring that is on the increase, and I don't believe that we're delivering what we should be. Thank you.
Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, my question relates to page 24, 4.2 paragraph, and it references the reserves that the Council have used previously and budget strategy that was agreed in February 24. I think it might be useful. It's got a table there stating that we've got unallocated funding of 1.947 million. And funding earmarked as part of current budget strategy. We've not seen a full list of reserves of what's allocated and unallocated, and I appreciate that while it might appear that we've got lots of reserves, some of these, or a portion of these, will be allocated. But is it possible to share with all members? I appreciate this might have been shared with the budget panel, but I certainly don't sit in the budget panel, so I've not had sight of that. Is there a list of all our reserves which is clearly indicating what is allocated and what is unallocated, and can that be shared? My second question I had was just, going back to the comments that Councillor Thompson was making about the employers' national insurance. I'm acutely aware, due to my statement, the connection of the national picture and Scottish Government's additional funding that they have allocated, but I'm also acutely aware that there's been absolutely nothing forthcoming from the UK Government. We wrote as part of our full Council decision on the 13th of January to the Chancellor. Have we had any response at all from the UK Government? Because this is, such a critical issue, and as reflected, in terms of our health and social care provision, it's absolutely vital that we get as much certainty as possible on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hagman. Just to confirm that the details of the service reserves are circulated at the beginning of the financial year in terms of the details, where all amounts are generally committed or ring-fenced for a specific purpose. The ones highlighted within this report are those that we feel are available to support members as part of their budget considerations, and these are the only amounts that we would say are available at this point in time. Services have received, commitment as part of the approval back in, I think it was June, with the service reserves, and are spending in line with that. At this point in time, we won't know the exact amount in terms of how much they've spent and if there is any amounts that may be uncommitted in relation to those. So the reserves that are set out in the report are those that are only available at this point in time for members' consideration.
Can I come back on that point, Chair? Yeah. No, I appreciate that, but a lot of maybe changed since June, and it would be appropriate, I think, to request that we get a full list of where we're currently sitting at. I appreciate that it may be officers' thoughts that you feel what is available and what is not, but it would just be useful to actually see that actual detail, please. So if I could make that request, I would like to see just where we are. Thank you. In terms of the UK government, have we had anything back?
So, I'm not aware of any letter coming back. Mr Evans, has anything come through?
No, I'm not aware of anything, Chair.
And Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. No, it was just, I think it's largely been said now, probably by Councillor Hagman just there, but I think it was more around the concern over Health and Social Care Partnership, and we're all obviously aware that there's intense pressure and has been over the last number of years, which reserves have been able to cover, as far as I understand it. But I think as we go forward, we probably need to get a revisioning of how we're going to actually sustain services in partnership, because we are becoming more and more aware of the pressures. I think the point I was trying to get to with the employers' national insurance contributions was, just looking at arithmetic, and I want to sort of move focus away from political parties or whatever. It's more just about the numbers, and I think when it comes to national insurance, having enough of a challenge already, and whether that's sort of grown over the last few years, an extra £6 million a challenge at least on top of that, in no way that I can see actually helps that, and that's obviously why the council took a decision to lobby to try and get more support with that. So I think it was really just, I think Councillor Hagman sort of covered off the points, but thanks for letting me in again, Chair.
All right. With that, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. And apologies because I haven't got my pre-written script today, so I'm reading this off the cuff, so apologies. It's just with regards to the national insurance, we have had the biggest settlement in the history of devolution, and that has to come from somewhere, unfortunately. And it's just with regards to the 5.2 billion on top of that. I think we should be lobbying the Scottish Government to get more money to the council, considering that the national insurance is brought up at every single meeting just now. So I would ask that we write to the Scottish Government and ask them to give us some more money. Thank you.
Right, thanks for that. I think we had agreed that we would write to ask on these points to make sure that the fullest funding is given to us as required. Right, if there's no one else, we'll go to the recommendations. Members are asked to note 1, the details of the local government finance settlement 25-26 as reflected at Appendix 1. 2, the additional core revenue funding of 289.3 million, of which Dumfries and Galloway's share is estimated at 7.113 million, has been reflected within the settlement, in addition to further resources for new commitments, specific purposes, as reflected at paragraph 4.9. 3, that the Council's funding gap has been updated to reflect the impact of the Local Government Finance Settlement and changes to the budget operating assumptions as detailed at section 4.15, and 4, that the current projections reflected within this report may be subject to change as further information becomes available and as the budget bill progresses through the Scottish Parliament. Members happy to note 1, 2, 3 and 4? Yep. And there's a couple of actions in there that will, a letter, and we'll see if we can get the updated, was it free reserves if they're there? Item 5, Council Revenue Budget Monitoring Report 24-25 for the period ended 31st of December 2024. Members are provided with an overview of the Council's overall financial performance for the current financial year as at the end of Q3, and the main financial pressures that are continuing to impact the Council's position, including non-pay inflation and other budgetary pressures. We are also asked to consider the allocation of available resources to address pressures in the homelessness service as detailed in the report. Stephen White and Gillian Ross are here to assist if members have any questions. Over to members. Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Thank you. There's quite a bit in here in relation to social work and some of the deficits that they're likely to incur due to the increase in costs and such like. I know that we have a social work committee later on this week, but I'm just really questioning the order in which we're doing this, because we're here to sort of look at the finance and the budgetary sort of situation in relation to this. But I'm not really sure it's been through the social work committee. So can we get some clarification on, is the process that we're currently engaging on, are we doing it the right way around, or should we allow this to go to social work committee first for them to make a decision in relation to what their situation is, and then bring that to us? So it's really just that sort of governance, I suppose, situation question. Thanks.
Gillian, can you answer that one?
Sure, thank you, Councillor McFarlane. So just to confirm that the pressures that are highlighted within the report in relation to social work are those that have been highlighted throughout the financial year. So we've been consistently reporting that, and that has been considered by the Social Work Services Committee already. Much of the detail within the last consideration by the Social Work Committee did set out all the increases in demand and the associated costs. So they have already been subject to a level of consideration and review by the Social Work Committee, and it is the Finance, the Enabling and Customer Services Committee that can only allocate resources in relation to that, and we've obviously worked closely with the Chief Social Work Officer to determine the approach and the resources that are required at this point in time. So I feel that this is a normal process. It's just the timing of the committees, but it has been already fully considered by the Social Work Services Committee.
Does that answer your point, Councillor McFarlane?
Yes, it offers a bit of clarity. Thank you.
Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just really to follow up on that, and it's just to double check the process. And I did raise this morning within the Business Bureau as well. In our previous council structure, the iteration, we had Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee that would receive similar requests from service committees, but we would always have the report that had gone to the service committee, so that to offer that reassurance that had been through the due process. Because, you know, just building on what Councillor McFarlane had said there, you know, and I totally agree, this is looking at the finances. It's not necessarily for us to scrutinise the whys and what's happening on the ground as such. But, you know, there's not, within the background papers, there's not a report linking back to any of the social work committees. So while I appreciate the response from the officer that this has been through social work and it's been widely reported, there's no reports that I can then link that back. So can we just ensure that we've got, as I appreciate we maybe don't want to put it as an appendix, but at least for the background reading, that information's there, and we're making sure we do things in the right order, because again, my understanding is on Social Work Committee, there's reference to the committee today in this issue, but if we've already allocated the funding before it's been through social work, it just feels like we're a bit back to front on that. Thank you.
Seems to be a bit of a governance question. Mr. Evans, is it appropriate to proceed in this manner today, or is there an issue with regard to paperwork?
I'm not sure there's an issue as such, Chair. It was certainly discussed at Business Bureau this morning in terms of the timetabling of meetings to ensure that in future the timetable is such that enabling would meet sort of towards the end of the each committee cycle, so it can pick up those references from other service committees. Don't think there's any impediment to proceeding with the decision this morning. Clearly it will be subject to the proposal being agreed at social work later this week.
So hopefully that answers the point. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 79, 410. It's economy and infrastructure. There's obviously been a breakdown with the council plant at Loch and Moss, and the question really is, how will that affect the costs of running it or any income it actually provides? Thank you.
Gillian, are you able to answer that?
Yes, so apologies, there's not a lot of detail within here in terms of the breakdown. There has been a report to the recent EEI committee in terms of the overall process. But what's happened at the moment is the area that has received a mechanical breakdown isn't an area that will no longer be required as part of the zero waste strategy. So there has been the decision to try and accelerate the works for the zero waste strategy, which will allow that area to start those works early, and that will then reduce the impact to the cost to the council associated with waste diversion that we've had during the immediate term of the breakdown. So we anticipate that there will be an element of additional costs incurred by the council this year associated with the breakdown and the need to transfer waste or divert waste to alternative solutions at the moment, but those will be contained within the overall resources available to the service through the utilisation of non-recurring resources in service reserves. So does that answer your question, Councillor Slater?
Yes, mainly it does. It was just the fact that it's out, the costs of actually going to an outside contractor. Obviously, that waste will have to go to an outside contractor now, and the costs of that will they become more. And that's what I'm really asking. Thank you.
Yeah, so you're correct. I don't have the exact figure as to how much the additional diversion costs us per day, but it will be short-term in relation to those aspects. And as I say, with the acceleration of those works at the Zero Waste Park, it's anticipated that we will no longer have those costs before the end of this financial year.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to 2.2, we're happy to agree the allocation of resources to support budgetary pressures and increased demands on our homelessness service. We have declared a housing emergency in this council, as have the Scottish Government after us, I hasten to add. But in relation to page 87, homelessness, but particularly on page 88, third paragraph down, what congratulate officers in the council, because we very seldom focus on that, but the good work done by them in terms of re-tendering for contracts and able to secure a significantly lower rate for a number of services in relation to accommodation providers. So whilst we focus on issues of we don't have enough money, I think we sometimes don't focus enough on the work that's being done behind the scenes to enable us to actually make significant savings. So just a thank you to officers on behalf of us. Thanks.
And Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I'm looking at page 78 under social work and the overspend of 742,000. And I just asked Gillian if this is really an accurate reflection. It was reported, I think, at the last social work committee that social work run with something 80 plus vacancies that they can't fill. And I did ask the chief social worker then, are we taking these as savings effectively and not showing a true reflection of what the actual overspend is? I've got an assurance that as soon as they can fill these vacancies, they will do so. But are we really seeing an accurate reflection of what the overspend actually could be if you consider the savings that are made on not filling the posts in that respect? Also on the IGB, Integrated Joint Board, what we were told about Right Care, Right Place in terms of number of beds being purchased that have fallen well short, particularly west of the region from the Stewartry right through to Wigtownshire, that they are well below the figures that we were assured and promised in the first year. And also in this one, when it talks about the national care contracts, I don't know what the figure is now, but it was running, increasing from 3,000 of unmet care need hours within the provision. And I just wonder where that is reflected again in the delivery of services that we would expect. And just as a point, I've already made it in terms of additional support needs, and under this, in terms of economic and infrastructure, I can understand the transport, but there is, in my opinion, a need for a huge deficit in being delivered to kids who need that additional support. I know it's not under that department, it's under education. It would be good at some time if this committee could actually get a report just to see the true reflection in terms of additional support needs. Thanks, Chair.
So, Gillian, do these figures reflect the points that Councillor Scobie has made? That, you know, are the 80 vacancies reflected in the overspend, or are they being used to address some of the overspend, etc.?
Thank you, Chair. So just to confirm, the 742,000 is the net overspend for the service that we are anticipating at the end of this year. So that does reflect, as we've highlighted at section 4.5, it is a £2.1 million projected overspend in relation to children's residential placements, and those are being offset or mitigated during the year in relation to underspends in relation to vacancies, but also some of the delays that we've seen in relation to the progression of the investment measures and the mitigation measures that were approved as part of the 24-25 budget. So that does take into account all of these on a net basis, but it's not being reflected on a recurring basis. It's just in terms of what we're seeing this year in terms of reflecting those reduced costs. So the amounts that we've just considered as part of the previous paper in relation to the budget pressures does allocate resources of £3 million next year to support children's residential placements, which is in relation to the genuine expectation in terms of additional resources that are required to support that. So just to provide that assurance that while we've got that position this year, there's not an expectation, and the service are actively trying to recruit to those positions. So we're not taking that into account on a permanent basis. In relation to the IGB question on the unmet care, the requirement or the spend is based on what care we're providing at the moment, but in terms of the ability to answer in terms of what's happening with that, unfortunately that's not something I can answer at this point in time.
Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members, officers. It's just in regard to, and it's just a follow on from Councillor Dorward's point with regards to the homelessness pressure, which is in the appendix at 87 to 89. yeah, first of all, just to really welcome, the good work that's been done to reduce the contracts for accommodation and kind of with the 300,000. The point above that, though, as well, I suppose, is to welcome the fact that we're now, I know it's still a 1.1 million pressure, but we are to consolidate, recurring funding of 165,000 into the team. And it was really just to seek clarification or confirmation that is for additional numbers to cope with the demand. But we're still, even with doing that, there is still a significant pressure going forward in the new financial year.
Gillian.
Yes, just to confirm that the resources that are reflected in terms of the application is based on an assessment that we've undertaken with the homelessness team and with other colleagues in relation to the welfare and housing options team in terms of what is required to cope with the current levels of demand that we are experiencing in terms of homelessness. So this will provide that level of support to enable that service to continue dealing with the current levels of demand.
Thanks, Julian.
I have no further speakers. If we turn to the recommendations, members are asked to note the ongoing financial pressures and increasing demand impacting council services 24-25 and the forecast outturn position against agreed budgets as provided in Appendix 1. Agree the allocation of resources available to support the budgetary pressures and increased demands, including those required to address current pressures in the homelessness services detailed in Appendix 2, and note the progress against the delivery of agreed savings reflected within the 24-25 budget as provided in Appendix 3. Before we go to the last bit, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, apologies, Chair, my hand came up too slowly there. It was just, in terms of 2.2, it was just to get that basically clarification that is it in Appendix 2 that it's effectively 1504 that we're needing to allocate, and that 800k of that is just to address the non-delivery of the agreed savings as well as the homelessness. So obviously we need to allocate resources, and this is the appropriate place to do it. It was just to get that, just clarification on the actual figures for each thing. I understand the sort of offsetting against the unspent budgets against pressures in other areas of the system, but it looks like from that table it's 800k targeted saving shortfall that we're actually allocating resources for, as well as the 704 for homelessness service. Is that correct?
Gillian.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to confirm that the total resources that we're seeking approval of is the 1.504. So, as Councillor Thompson has stated, it's for the 704 for homelessness and the 800 for targeted savings, and that's increasing up to the £1.998 million for 25-26. So, we're all being accommodated within the resources that we've currently got available within 24-25, but the two amounts are the 1504 increasing up to 1998.
Thanks for that. And just to yourself, Chair, quickly. So are we anticipating that we won't make the agreed savings? There'll be a shortfall in the agreed savings next year as well, which will be slightly higher than this year.
Gillian.
The assumption reflected in the funding gap is that the allocation of these resources fully addresses those savings, so there's no need to carry forward. So the funding gap that you have for next year, the 11.799 million, is fully reflective of all savings, and with these being addressed in the current financial year. So there's no carry forward of any shortfalls.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Slater. Right, with that clarification, are members happy to note 1 and 3 and agree recommendation 2? Now move on to item 6, which enabling customer services revenue budget monitoring report 24-25 for the period ended 31st of December, quarter 3. This report provides members with an overview of performance against budget for the period ending 31st of December 2024. for enabling and customer services for the current financial year. Gillian Ross and Lewis Ramos are here to assist if members have any questions. Over to members. Doesn't seem to be many concerns. It seems to be that we're within budget, so if members are happy with that, we'll move to recommendations. Members are asked to note that based on the monitoring position to the end of December, enabling customer services projected to return a small underspend of 167,000 by the end of the financial year as detailed in Appendix 1, and progress against the delivery of agreed savings applied to enabling and customer services budget in 24-25 as reflected in Appendix 2. Members happy to note 1 and 2. Right, agreed. We'll move on to item 7. Capital Investment Strategy Monitoring Report 24-25 for the period ended 31st December 2024, quarter 3. Members are presented with an update on the 10-year capital investment strategy and an overview of the financial progress of the capital programme for the current financial year based on the position as at 31st of December 2024. The committee is asked to consider an acceleration of the overall programme of up to 2.8 million for Dumfries High School due to the construction of the school being approximately 6 weeks ahead of schedule. Suzanne Hewson and Alan Gass are here to assist members, and Karen Donaldson's also here if there's questions to be asked. Over to members. Councillor Dorward.
I mean, it's a positive comment again, Chair. Getting into a bad habit here. It's a joke. Totally agree the acceleration of up to 2.8 million for Dumfries High School, and really heartened to see that it's 6 weeks ahead of schedule. That's fantastic for the town and the ward that it's in. Thank you.
If there's no other... Oh, Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, Chair, it's just this seems to be a trend. It's in relation to capital receipts, and I don't think it's an overly ambitious target of 500,000. I can remember, we used to set them at $1.5 million, 2 million a year, and even the 500,000 we're looking at the moment, although it does say that there should be some, hopefully, properties that are sold before the end of the financial year, but we're only a couple of months away from that. But to only have achieved 94,000 is not really good, considering it was a very small amount that we identified this year. And I don't think it's, whilst it says that it can, the second half of the paragraph says about it can be utilised from surplus receipts in the past. I don't think that's a positive message going forward. I think if we set a target, and I think it is a realistic target of only 500,000, then we should be able to achieve that.
I think that is a sort of ongoing concern. However, if we keep selling properties and assets, we'll have nothing left, and eventually it'll come down to a sort of a nil point anyway. But I think there are assets that we need to look to whether we can change them, and some will become surplus. And do you think there's a supply of assets to actually sell off yet? Is that something that we could find out if there's something there? Or are we looking at, we're getting to a point where we've sold the things we don't need and we're sort of fewer assets to sell off? Ms Donaldson.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the issue of capital receipts came up again at the committee last time, and on the back of that action, we've uploaded to members' SharePoint the list of properties that are declared surplus, those that are on the market, and those that are under offer, and we'll continue to keep that updated on a quarterly basis. So as that indicates, we've currently got 3 properties under offer, so we anticipate the receipts for this year will increase from the 94,000. And obviously we're hopeful that the £500,000 a year target is achievable. However, if that isn't the case, we'll review it in future, but at this moment in time, we still feel that that target can be achieved, albeit there will be years when receipts are maybe higher or lower than some years. I mean, obviously we've got amounts in reserves just now from surplus receipts from previous years, so we do appreciate that timing will play a factor in that.
Yeah, quickly, just to come back to you, yeah, and just to Karen, you know, I think I raised that last time, and thank you as well. Of course, we did get the list of properties. I do think though as well, when you look at our asset portfolio and buildings, etc., I still think there is enough scope within there to achieve the savings that we identify. I know I take your point here that we are reducing the estate, but we still, Dumfries and Galloway Council still has a large portfolio, which I'm sure we can achieve like a £500,000 a year going forward, at least.
I suppose we also have the fact that it's the sort of confidence in the economy. If there's people out there looking to develop properties or things like that, so it's maybe partly out of our hands, but like you say, Councillor Marshall, I think there is opportunities to look at maximising that figure. Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so it's just, again, it's a similar governance point to the previous item where we were talking about homeless services. So we're being asked to agree the acceleration for Dumfries High School, which absolutely, I think that's a really positive news story, and I think it's to be absolutely welcome. But in the narrative, it does make reference that a report is being prepared for education, skills and community wellbeing. Again, it feels like we're doing things a little bit back to front. And although I maybe should have suggested it in the previous item, are we agreeing in principle to the acceleration because it's not been through that due process as yet, or are we agreeing subject to the decision of the Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Committee? So it's just to make sure that we're tight in terms of our governance, because again, there's no appendix in this report of what report's going to say, and I'm aware that it's now available online, but it wasn't available when these papers were compiled and published. So it's just to make sure that we're tight going forward. Thank you.
Ms Donaldson, is this the case that, well, actually the project has gone ahead and all we are being asked to do is, as the committee that allocates the money, bring it forward rather than actually needing a decision to actually go through education? Because theirs would be just that it's happening quicker, but it would have to come back here, and it makes common sense just to allocate the money out of the budget that's already been allocated.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and it is this committee that's got the delegations to approve that acceleration of spend. We wouldn't be asking Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing to approve anything on that basis. They're obviously just getting an update on the project and a bit more detail about how the project's ahead of schedule, but it is this committee that's the decision maker for the acceleration of funding.
Councillor Hagman.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I wouldn't suggest for a moment that we don't approve the funding at all, but the report says that there will be an additional report which will indicate that the Dumfries High, so we don't have access to that report, and that's my point. It's just about being tight with our governance, so I wouldn't suggest for a second that we don't approve that. It's just, can we make sure we get our timings correct on this? Thank you.
Will do. We'll look into that further through governance. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 102, item 4.6. It says the purchase of land now being unlikely to complete until next financial year. But I'd have to ask there, surely if you need to purchase land for a project, that should have been done some time ago. It seems a little bit late in the day to try and purchase land now when the project's been designed. That's what I'm saying, really. You know, this project was designed, so that would be hopefully in the project, and the land should have been purchased then, I would have thought.
This is the sort of finance part of it whereby we agree the funding for it. The actual delivery of it would be through the relevant committee, and it might be more appropriate to bring that question up then, why it wasn't done at that stage. But have you anything to add to that, Ms Donaldson, or is that just the case that this is the finance that we're looking at rather than how the project proceeds?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do know the sort of negotiations around that land purchase have been ongoing for some time, and obviously these things do take quite a while with the legal input that's required as well.
So if you get an opportunity, maybe bring it up at the appropriate point in the appropriate committee for this project.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. If there are no other speakers, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, you maybe give me the same answer here. I'm looking at 4.7, and again it's 0.997 million being for the Stranraer Marina in support of the full business case. I don't know if this committee is able to say, but we discussed this in September. Maybe a wrong phraseology, but when will we see shovels on the ground? The actual, you know, the work being commenced.
It's maybe a bit like the last one, but do you have any indications of progress on this one?
Thank you, Councillor Scobie. I understand there's a report going to be presented to Economy and Infrastructure Committee in April, specifically on the marina, and a sort of progress update. So hopefully you'll get the update you're looking for at that committee.
Right. With that, I don't see any other hands up. Move to recommendations. Members are asked to, 1, note the financial and physical progress against the 24-25 capital programme for the quarter ending 31st of December 2024 as detailed at Appendix 1. 2, agree acceleration of up to 2.8 million for Dumfries High School as detailed at paragraph 4.4. 3, note the updated development cost requirements as detailed as Appendix 2. And 4, note the current prudential indicators based on the 31st of December 2024 monitoring position as detailed at Appendix 3. Members happy to note 1, 3 and 4 and agree to? Take silence as consent. Now move on to item 8, further development of the capital investment strategy. This report provides information to support members' considerations on the further development of the Council's capital investment strategy, including the details of the capital funding support reflected in the 25-26 local government finance settlement. Karen Donaldson and Alan Gass are here to assist if members have any questions. Over to members. Councillor Slater, is that a legacy hand? You want to speak just now? Right, on you go.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 121. It would be good to know this scheme started off at 12 million, then 15 million, then 25 million. It would be good to know where the cost is approximately now, because there's one in Scotland that started at 10 and it's over 100 million now, so it's important. Thank you.
I take it that's the White Sands Flood Project scheme. My understanding that's currently going through detailed plans to work up to get prepared for tender. Is that correct? Karen, anything to add to that, if there's any updates?
Yeah, no, No, thank you, Councillor Slater. Obviously, as outlined in the report, we're saying that the White Sands flood scheme is going through detailed design, and until that detailed design work's complete, it's very hard to put a firm cost estimate, and any sort of figure we were providing at this stage would sort of be speculative. But we are at the stage where we're anticipating that a more sort of robust and final cost estimate will be available later this calendar year. Wouldn't like to put or preempt the detailed design work at this stage. But obviously we do know that the likelihood is that, given that the cost estimates that are in the capital investment strategy just now are a little outdated, that it will be higher than the 25 million, but we just don't have that firm clarity as yet.
Just one last follow-up. Thank you for that. Yes. One last point. This is costly. Technology has moved on in leaps and bounds, and at this stage, that project's about, what, 10 to 15 years old. And as I say, technology's moved on. So if this is built, it's going to be really out of date. And the people in Dumfries would like to see something more modern and more highly technical, and save parts of our town, green areas and things like that, and our shows. These are very important issues for our town. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, take your points on board. But previous, as I said, it's more for the E&I think, committee rather than here. This is more just the finance, and we have to worry about finding the pound, shilling and pence, and they'll be the ones who are worrying about whether it's the right project for the right place. Councillor Ferguson, then Councillor Mail.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm referring to the spreadsheet. It's Appendix 1. See, the Regional Indoor Tennis Centre has got nothing against it at all. Does that mean our contributions towards that has already been paid? Just if you can clarify, please.
Ms Donaldson.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The council contribution will be utilised in the current financial year, and then the remainder of the project will be from either the external funding support for the project or from the sort of reserves that have been set aside. So there's no requirement to allocate any of the sort of capital investment strategy funding to that project going forward.
Thank you.
Right, and Councillor Mail.
Yeah, Chair, it's on the flood protection schemes, and do we get to a stage where the cost becomes such that this council can't afford its capital input? Because I believe we're liable for, what, 20%? And as they rise, then is other things going to have to suffer if we proceed? Will there be a stage at which another decision can be made about this if the cost suddenly comes out with what can be afforded by the council?
My understanding, it will go through a process, and it will be up to members at the appropriate time whether they wish to proceed to procurement. But Ms Donaldson, is there any, if it exceeds its current value, will it affect other projects?
Thank you. So obviously, if the funding required for the project's in excess of what members have allocated as part of the capital investment strategy, absolutely would need to come through the committee process to get that approval for the additional funding and the considerations of how that additional funding is addressed. So absolutely it would be a member decision at the appropriate time when the final costs are available.
Don't know if that answers your question, but it would appear that there are opportunities if things get out of
It's just that we have two schemes here, and obviously the Newton Stewart one is proceeding, but I don't think we've got any final cost for that yet either. So there's two schemes here that could be costing, escalating every day literally, and there could be an end finance to this that we're pouring money in to get it to there, but then not able to do it.
Yeah, but anything that does, if it doesn't go up, it will have to come back to this committee for inclusion into the capital strategy, or if you wish to set it in your budget coming up, that might be somewhere to do it. I did notice a hand. Was it Councillor Dorward?
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely commend the ambitious capital investment strategy that the Council have. A lot of that were set in train by previous administrations, but nevertheless I commend what's happening and that we are taking some ambitious and bold decisions, which is laudable and refreshing, given last week. However, I think what Councillor Mail is saying I'm a bit of sympathy for, but I think in terms of all capital projects, we need to review them robustly, all of them that are in the list here, because all of them could exceed the costs that are actually there at the moment. So I don't think it's just focusing on one or two specific things. I think we have to focus on all of them, and that's what we're here to do, here and in economy and resourcing, or whatever the new term for it, committee. I think we should have confidence in ourselves that we can make that happen. But I do commend the additional investment, capital investment that's ongoing just now, because this is what the region needs, and it actually gives other investors confidence to invest in the region as well, hopefully from the private sector. Are you listening, private sector? Thank you.
Right, if there's no other speakers, move to recommendations. Members are asked to note that the 25-26 local government finance settlement reflected a 7.5% increase in general capital grant, which equates to 1.488 million increase for Dumfries and Galloway Council in 25-26, fully reversing the cut in the funding received in 24-25. 2, the estimated funding available to support capital investment across the 10-year capital investment strategy period 25-26 to 34-35, as summarised at paragraph 4.8 and detailed in Appendix 1. 3, the strategic projects updates and potential further investment requirements outlined at paragraph 4.12 to 4.13 and Appendix 2 for members' consideration as part of the development of their capital investment strategy proposals. 4, the development cost requirements for 25-26 as detailed at Appendix 3, and that further support will be provided to members to support their considerations on the development of the 10-year capital investment strategy as part of the current budget setting process. Are members happy to note 1 to 5? I'll take silence as agreement. Move on to item 9. Procurement and Commissioning Performance Update, Financial Year 2024-25, Quarter 2, 1st of July 24 to 30th September 24. Committee is asked to consider the Council's overall procurement performance against a range of indicators and highlighted its key achievements and significant challenges during Quarter 2 of 2024-25. Malcolm Anderson and Karen Scott are here to assist if members have any questions. Over to members for questions. I suppose the one that I noted, the local spend was slightly down, but is that reflected by the fact that we actually have a bigger spend at the high school, which makes a national contract out of the thing, and within that I take it there will be local spend in there that's actually brought the local spend up percentage wise?
Thanks, Chair. So yes, absolutely, as you indicate and as detailed within the report, it does create that because we've got the higher spend, which is over 10 million more than we would spend in a typical period. It has affected the reportable percentage. However, we have included within this report, and will continue to refine and report on the impact of the Dumfries High School as a major infrastructure project. So we're still tracking the local economic and social impacts through Dumfries High School, and we'll see that refined throughout future reporting periods as well. I think the only other thing to highlight in terms of the actual reported position as well, as a value, it still sits around the 19 million. So we've previously reported our local spend being directly at 19 million, and as a value that remains consistent through this reporting period, albeit the percentage reported does see a slight reduction.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Chair. Karen, we used to get some information about community benefit clauses for contractors that we procure from. Can you give us any idea what has been the uptake of that, and actually just how well publicised is it amongst the voluntary groups, for example, in the region?
Ms Scott.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Ferguson. So the community benefit clauses, we've seen a considerable increase in terms of the commitments that are being made. I'd actually been tracking that earlier today, and so we're sitting with around 250 live commitments across all the council contracts to deliver community benefits. We have the community benefit wish list as well, which has been promoted through local community groups, and we are also looking at some sort of newsletter that we can try and use to promote some of the delivery as well across the supply base that we have across the council. We do have a bit of work to do in terms of the reporting of the delivery. So the team are currently working on a reporting model. So for the end of this financial year, we actually can see some good progress in terms of the actual delivery of those commitments as well. So we'll already start to see that in the next report that will be due for Q3. I've taken a look in advance of committee today, and there is an improvement on Q3 delivery positioning compared to where we were at Q2. And I think a lot of that is around the improved reporting as opposed to the actual performance. We've seen the performance throughout this year has been steadily increasing in terms of actual delivery as well.
Can I come back, Ivor?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair. So, Karen, how do voluntary groups actually know about this? I think that's my point where I'm coming from here. And should this not be something we highlight on the council website, for example, under the funding part? Because I had a quick look at that for an organisation quite recently, and it doesn't say, and as you know, you've provided me with information in the past, and it's really useful and very helpful. I'm just wondering if we could be a bit more user-friendly as far as the voluntary groups in that, for example.
Ms Scott.
Thanks. And the community benefit wish list is in fact on the council website under the application for grants and funding page. But certainly we can take another look to make sure that that's clear and evident. And again, we can put some additional comms around that so that on a periodic basis as well, we're promoting that. And again, I'm happy to share with members of this committee a direct link as well for further reference and sharing with wider community groups as well. So it's clear where the application process is, but it does sit within the grants and funding page on the council website at the moment.
Councillor Hagman.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies if this has been answered by Karen already, and I'm looking at page 133, and that's the social and local economic value committed and what's been delivered to date. So I appreciate Karen saying that this is only Q2, but I'm sort of trying to think back. I don't recall seeing a table like this. So the second table on page 133, which references KPIs from, well, it's Southwest, Hub Southwest and the main contractor. But I'm just, will we get a full update of this at the end of the year? I'm just slightly concerned that, there's a commitment of local employment and we're nowhere near delivery. I appreciate this is only Q2, but it's only one person. No disabled people would appear to have benefited from this. There's a huge spend for apprenticeships, and I would hope that planning assumptions would have been made within that. I mean, I won't go through each line there, it's there for all to see, but how do we monitor that in year, or do we simply just wait for the end of year adjustments on that and then note it? I'm not quite sure what the role is here, and if we've got any influence, or can we write to the main contractors just to seek assurances that they're going to fully deliver on what has been committed, noting that we're only a month away from this financial year anyway, so they would surely know at this point. Thanks.
Karen.
Thanks. So this particular table Councillor Hagman refers to is specifically for Dumfries High School and has been provided by Hub South West. So that was the table that I referenced earlier in terms of still being able to show that local economic and social impacts being delivered through the contract costs associated with that major infrastructure project at Dumfries High School. There has been continued improvement. We now receive this report through my team directly from the main contractor on a monthly basis. This forms part of the actual project's contract management on a monthly basis as well, where we're ensuring that there is continued progress against the committed targets. There will be, in the Q3 report, you'll see that progress. The intention would be to present an updated table through this committee for additional scrutiny and oversight in terms of those wider local economic and social impacts of Dumfries High School project, just given the size and scale of that has been quite significant for the council. So we'll continue to provide that for noting purposes. However, give the reassurance that through the monthly monitoring of the contract as well, that this is part of the agenda and has been picked up through those project meetings there.
Right. And Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 127, 3.23. It's nice to see, or good to see, there's been an improvement in level of competition for council contracts with an increase in quotes. Does that mean that there's more local companies actually applying for this work now to get the contracts? More local companies within the area being able to get contracts? Or is it still companies out with the area?
I think it's a mix of both. I think there's a further Meet the Buyer session coming up, planned for local people. But Karen, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Slater. As referred to by the Chair, it is a bit of a mix in terms of that increase in competition, both in terms of those that are registered as a D&G headquarters business and those out with. What we're finding, there's a lot more informal dialogue is taking place, certainly with businesses with a local presence, and we're not always tracking whether or not their headquarters is within region or out with, but they're certainly with a significant local presence, and that's the informal conversations that we're having, that we're seeing bids and things come forward as a consequence of, and as the Chair referenced, we have got the wider regional Meet the Buyers in Dumfries and Newton Stewart scheduled for late April, and we're also looking at facilitating some workshops round about that as well that will support local businesses to consider business consortiums or cooperatives as well, to try and be more inclusive in terms of the local business base ability to bid.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
With that, I have no other speakers indicating. So members are asked to note the content of the procurement and commissioning performance update for Q2 of financial year 24-25 as provided at the appendix. Members happy to note? That's agreed. Move on to item 10. ICT Business Systems Asset Class Capital Programme 24-25 Monitoring Report. In line with the Council's Capital Financial Code and quarterly reporting, this paper presents members with the net spend position at the end of November 2024 for financial year 24-25 for the ICT Business Systems Asset Class Capital Programme projects. James Pocock is here to assist if members have any questions. Over to members. Councillor Dashburn.
Hi, Chair. Thank you. My question is about artificial intelligence and AI. I'm just wondering, how does that fit into our business systems and digital intelligence programs in terms of costs as well? For instance, in social work, you've got they're using AI to help facilitate the work that they do. So how is that all accosted for throughout the council? Thank you.
Mr. Pocock.
So we're just at an early stage at looking on that, and our intention is at the June committee, as part of the wider digital update, to bring members more detailed information around about what we're doing with artificial intelligence and some of the opportunities and some of the costs that we might be looking at as well. So I don't have that information today or the detail, but we'll bring that forward to members as part of that wider update.
Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's regarding communication and technicalities of that. As home phones are being discontinued by a broadband providers, and they work on a slightly different system, like a hardwire phone. Even if your power goes off, your phone can still work. I just wonder what's to happen with that, because there's care call and everything like that in that system. I just wonder what improvements and how will that work into the future. Thank you.
Mr. Pocock.
So colleagues in Care Call are actively working at the moment as part of that analog to digital transition. So they're well underway with that. From the wider citizen perspective, this is an industry-led change. And I'm happy to pick up with Councillor Slater afterwards in more detail around about some of the support and information that the communication providers and Ofcom are putting out there to support citizens.
Councillor Slater.
Is this a situation where the people, am I right saying this, people can still have broadband but at a lower price, which it only takes their phone? Am I right saying that? So they don't actually get full broadband, they just get a broadband that will actually make their phone work within the system at a reduced rate? Because broadband is going up £3 every year now, and it's around about nearly £30 a month for some broadband. So the prices are getting quite high. So that's important that people can afford that as well.
Mr. Pocock.
So again, happy to pick up outside the meeting, but there are social tariffs that a number of the internet service providers promote as well. And again, details of those are on the suppliers' websites and on the Ofcom website. So happy to supply that separately.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Hagman, please.
Thanks, Chair. I should probably declare a statement of connection in regards to item 10 here, as well as the digital lead for COSLA. So I think, if I may, I've got two questions and a comment. So page 152, 4.7 references replacement of iPhones that will no longer be security compliant with the next software update. Can I confirm, or can I ask, does that also include iPads that are not going to be able to be updated just due to, I think, memory of maybe some of the older versions? So yeah, does that include iPads as well, or is that a separate stream of work? And my second, sort of more of a comment or request, really, on the back of Councillor Slater's comments there, I'm aware that the Digital Office is supporting all local governments, all local authorities in the switchover from digital to analogue in terms of care call, etc. I don't believe I've seen a members briefing on this, but is it possible to get a members briefing on where we are? If it's not appropriate for officers in the meeting today, can we perhaps request that out with? Because I am aware of constituents getting concerned about the very subject, where they have got analogue systems and how that links into our digital systems going forward. So is it possible to get maybe a members briefing following committee today on exactly what we're doing and how we're supporting communities on this? Thank you.
Mr. Pocock.
So in relation to iPads, yes, iPads will be included as part of the replacement programme. And with regards to the members' briefing, happy to pick up with colleagues who are leading on that and ask them to provide that to members.
And Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's a more general question on finances. 4.1, 4.2 in Appendix 1. Do we have... I know that the IT projects are notoriously challenging to manage. You're smiling dryly there. I appreciate that. Do we have an assurance to an extent that finances will stay within the indicative envelopes that you have outlined? Thank you.
Mr. Pocock.
Yes, we've certainly been working with colleagues in finance and procurement to provide a full 3-year plan. Certainly for our capital programme around about that. I think we've got a good handle of what we know today. That's not to say that things won't come up, But what we know today, I think we've got a good handle around about that.
I have no other speakers indicating they want in. So if we move to the recommendations, members are asked to note the ICT Business Systems Asset Class Programme progress for 2024-25 as set out in Appendix 1, and 2, the key project updates in this asset class as detailed in paragraphs 4.6 to 4.13, and an at-a-glance tracker for projects included in this asset class outlined in Appendix 2. Members happy to note 1 and 2? Great. Now we move on to item 11. Thanks, Jamie. Regulation of Investigatory Powers Scotland Act 2000, RIP brackets SA, policy updates. The purpose of this report is to agree updates to our 2 policies in relation to the use of regulation of investigatory powers, Scotland Act 2000. The Regulation of Investigatory Powers Scotland Act 2000, I'm going to call it RIPSA for short, provides a statutory framework under which covert surveillance activity can be authorised and conducted compatibly with the European Convention on Human Rights. Matt Thompson and Vlad Valiente are here to assist if members have any questions. Over to members. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you. How does that affect, Vlad, like sort of CCTV in premises? Will that be covered as well? Because that's, you know, some people can say you're intruding on our rights, but some cameras can be pixelated so they don't cover certain areas. I just wondered what your feelings were or thoughts were on that. Thank you.
Vlad.
Thank you, Chair. I'll come in. I don't know if Mark wants to state anything on top of that, but this is how we use the powers. It's not how other premises and so on might use them. So obviously premises will have their own legislation that they'll need to comply with, including obviously giving due notice for any CCTV cameras that might be in kind of public area places, but that's for them to comply through that. These are purely how the council is applying those powers, and in particular that kind of covert surveillance that we need authorisations for, and the paper members have in front of them specifically has changed our policy based on in essence the recent audit that we've had on it. Particularly, this is pointed out that we needed to update our social media part of it, but that's what this relates to more than what's out there for premises out with the council.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, I have 3 speakers. Now, I think I noticed them in a different order than Mr Evans, so we'll go with Mr Evans one, as he's keeping me right. So we've got Councillor Dashper.
Thanks, Chair. Looking at the appendix under policy review, item 15, it says that the Scottish Government Codes of Practice recommends that we review the policies at least once a year. Is that going to be happening from now on at least once a year, or how often are these going to be reviewed? Thank you.
Mr Thompson or Mr Valiente?
Yep, thanks, Councillor Dashper, for that question. Yeah, I can absolutely confirm the policies will be reviewed on an annual basis as well. Prior to this year and my taking on the RIPSA coordinator role, there was a wee bit of churn in terms of who held that role within the council. But now we've got a period of stability, so we will absolutely be aligning with the requirements in the policy document.
Thank you.
Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. This is something that I'm reasonably familiar with, but the application probably differs in local authorities from my previous role in Justice. There are commonalities about capabilities, experience and knowledge of people directing the traffic, so to speak. And it's a reassurance more than anything. I think it's page 171 of the appendix. that those authorising the process are trained to the degree they have to be to do so. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor Dorwood. Very pertinent question, and absolutely the authorising officers are given the full training to the same degree as the officers who would actually be using the powers are. We only have a small number within the council, but they are all being provided with that level of training.
And Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Dorward did touch on mine there. I was going to ask about the training, but can you tell me how many authorising officers we have? Do they have deputies? Because I can't imagine that we use this very often, but when we do, it's very important that we do get it right. Do we have a record of how often we actually initiate this legislation? And if we do, how do we record all that? Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Thompson.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor McFarlane. So, to start with, we have currently have four authorising officers in the council, which I think is an appropriate level, given, as you say, that these are not powers that we actively use on a regular basis. There were no uses of the power within the past 12 months. In terms of how we record this, we do have a protocol where it goes through the authorising officer, who will then take forward the proposal to the the Investigative Powers Commissioner's Office for their approval, and it is fully recorded. We've got a system where we lodge all those applications, and on an annual basis we report back to the Investigative Powers Commissioner's Office on any activity that we've undertaken. And from a council perspective, in terms of that scrutiny, that report is reported as part of an annual update to Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee as well.
There's no further questions. Move to recommendations. Members are asked to agree the updated authorisation of covert surveillance policy as set out in Appendix 1, and 2, the updated authorisation of the use of covert human intelligence source policy as set out in Appendix 2. Members happy to agree 1 and 2? Got general agreement. Thank you for that. Now move on to any other business deemed urgent by the Chair. I've not been notified of any other urgent business, so we'll move on to item 13, Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Consider adoption of resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 50A4 and paragraph 6 of part 1 of Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Do members agree to exclude the public from the meeting? Got agreement in the room.